Welcome to Market Overtime here on Schwab Network. I'm Diane King Hall. As we head into 2026, money isn't just about markets anymore. It's about wellness, freedom, and how people build their lives. Our next guest is right at the center of that shift. Jason Tartick is a best-selling author, podcast host, and financial educator who has worked to make conversations about money more accessible, relevant, and less intimidating. He's the host of Trading Secrets, author of Talk Money to Me, and co-founder of a talent firm representing over 150 digital creators, giving him a front row seat to how this generation earns, spends, and invests. He's here with me now with his Money Playbook for 2026. Jason, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Market Overtime.
Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Okay, so let's start out with the premise of your podcast, Trading Secrets. Tell us about that, both the genesis of that and what your intention is.
Yeah, so the podcast actually started. I was in finance in the banking industry, MBA in accounting and finance, and then I went on a reality TV show. And after that reality TV show in 2018, I got into content creation. And I had a lot of buddies of mine kind of making fun of me. Like, come on, what are you doing with this whole digital thing, swipe up? And I said, guess how much I made on that? And I told them. And they're like, excuse me? And it kind of, a light bulb clicked. And I was like, why in this world do we not talk about how much we make? Why do we always assume when we hear different industries or things that people have certain dollar amounts? Why aren't we talking to our peers in our same companies, like understanding what they make and how? And so I said, I'm gonna run with this. And so I started the podcast in 2020 with the idea, because of the reality show, I now have a new network of different public figures, athletes, comedians, reality stars, and I could talk to them about how they got to where they got and how much money they made along the way. So Trading Secrets is like pop culture meets money. Relevance meets money, athletes meets money, and all we do is talk about where money's made, how much is made, where did you lose it, where did you earn it? And I literally just came from the studio interviewing The Situation from Jersey Shore. Talking about how much he made per episode. Yeah. They went from $25 an episode to over $179,000 per episode. So we dove into negotiation tactics because there's so much behind the conversation of money transparency.
I love that this is the intersection of meeting money and not just about making money, but what happens when you incur a loss. So for those who aren't clued in, the reality show was The Bachelor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But what made you blow up your whole life? You were working in banking and like, okay, I'm going to blow up my life and pivot.
Yeah, so I'm very open with money and transparency. It was 2018. I was making $165,000 as a senior banker, and you could earn up to about 3 times your base salary based on your performance, right? One of the comings to I had is I realized I was just like this empty suit. I was talking the way I was supposed to talk, I was acting the way I was supposed to act, and I had no connection with myself. And I'll never forget it. I wrote it in my first book called The Restart Roadmap, which is all about resetting your career.
I read part of that.
I'm sitting at a big executive table. There's CEOs and CFOs, and I'm the lead youngest banker, and we got to win this pitch. And right as the pitch kicks off, I was like, uh-oh, is there a bathroom around here? And the CEO was like, excuse me? And I was like, I need a bathroom. Went to the bathroom, I passed out. I had a full-on panic attack. And I started to realize that I was living such a professional life that was so disconnected with who I am authentically and connecting with myself that I lost myself. And so when you say, why'd you take a leap of faith? I was just like, I've been a yes man in the professional career world for so long that I've lost my identity. And of all things, it was a reality show that kind of connected my head, heart, and passions. And so I took a shot. But I managed it almost, when you talk about cash inflow, I managed it almost like a minor league athlete.
Okay.
Like a lot of money was coming in from digital marketing and social media. But I figured, it's a reality show. This will be 5, 10, 15 minutes flash in a pan, and I'll have to go back to work. And here we are, this is going on year number 9 of doing it, and this has been my highest earning year of doing it. So it was a leap of faith, it was a shot, but it's one that paid off financially, professionally, and then I still get to do things like this and talk about my foundation of education, professional experience, which is finance and banking.
And you say numbers are basically your North Star. So let's talk percentages. So you just said what you were earning, and you said what upwards that could run to. where are you at now? You don't have to tell the exact
Yeah.
number, but percentage-wise,
Yeah.
what's been the trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty open, so I'll tell you. Every year I do an episode called Jason Tells All on my podcast, where I sit down and I go over my whole year and how much I made. Last year I made 2.7 million. That was in 2024. In 2025, I'm still gathering the numbers, but I outperformed that year. And that's a mix of the podcast, that's a mix of the agency that I own, and then my own content creation. So the North Star is, in my opinion, it's financial freedom, and it's doing it in a way that seems relatively authentic to everything that you believe in and how you believe in it. And so it's been fun.
Okay, yeah, obviously, and
Yeah.
especially when you get to numbers like that, because it's a big risk you take. Because when you're starting in that world, you're kind of starting from zero, right? You know, like you said, you approached it like minor league, and I know that your first book was all about the career reset, and a lot of people where their starting point is their career, and you kind of have to use your job to fund your dreams. What do you say to someone who's having that same thought process or thoughts that you were thinking at that time, and how you make that shift? And there's got to be also some practical things that you need to do.
I think the biggest practical thing that you could do is really understand, like, what is your God-given talent, what separates you, what just comes natural to you. I heard Tom Brady recently say, I was the most disciplined athlete on that field. I thought I was the best quarterback to ever throw a football. But even with all my hard work, I could only get probably 10 to 20% better. And he talked about different subjects in school we're terrible at. So if I pursued that as a profession, I never would have made it. I think you have to really dive within to understand what are the things that come natural to you. He talked about when he had a play and someone asked him to memorize it, 2 seconds he memorized it. Whereas backup quarterback, it took him 3 hours. He couldn't understand why. So I think we're all given some of these talents. We have to understand what they are within and then find different careers in which we could apply these skill sets. And then once we've finally found the lane where we can deploy the things that were God-given to us, that we just have a slight advantage of someone else, that's when we could start getting really smart about benchmarking how much people are making in the industry and how to negotiate for your raise and then how to invest properly. And so I think the idea is, if you're really stuck, a simple takeaway, if you have a kid that's stuck, a colleague that's stuck, family member that's stuck, what I say is, for 1 week straight, anytime you have one moment that's not committed to work or family, where are you spending that time? I don't care if it's taking a nap. I don't care if it's watching your favorite football team. Where is your free time being spent? Because behind that, whether it's sleeping or literally watching your favorite football team, there are billion-dollar industries in which you can focus on those niches. So 1 week, just write down all the places you're spending your time, the things you're consuming, the things you're reading, the things you're watching, and that'll kind of help pivot what you're naturally passionate about and what you can do with it.
So I am a big believer in that, especially it sounds like what you're saying is tapping into your gifts, talents, and abilities, doing soul searching to arrive at that. At the same time, there is this conversation now, and I don't mean to be Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
Because if you can't tell, that's not naturally my personality.
Yeah, you're not Debbie Downer.
No, but there's this conversation about AI
Yeah.
and the potential destructive nature it could have to certain careers. And it's already affecting certain careers and entry-level jobs. So it's making it hard for people who are coming right out of college to find a job in the workforce. What do you say, in terms of maybe even is there a need for a skills gap or skills pivot?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great conversation point. I think it even stems from where we started, which is when you took the leap of faith into this creator economy, you took a lot of risk. I did take a lot of risk, but if you look at the compound annual growth rate of the creator economy, it's like 23% right now. Connect that to AI. If you look at the compound annual growth rate of everything connecting AI and businesses and people, it is growing at double-digit, triple-digit levels. Now, where I have so much empathy is for these Gen Zers that started college in, let's say right during the pandemic. They started a major. AI wasn't even a conversation point. Now they're graduating and every single one of their jobs is being replaced by AI. And so we're seeing the youth unemployment rate right now is at all-time lows. And what I would tell those people is that the best companies that are implementing AI are large corporations. The more you spend, the faster it's implemented. That's usually not historically the norm. If you look at technology advancements, historically, it's been easier to adopt those to small businesses with less employees than they scale up to large corporate. With AI, large corporate, the more they spend, the faster the implementation. There are 30 million small businesses in this country right now, me being one of them, that needs help with AI implementation. So if I was a student, if I was in this youth unemployment group, I would be studying the heck out of AI because there's so much opportunity with consulting, with 1099 work, with businesses that will be created that aren't created around it. And we millennials, we need help implementing it. So I think there's a ton of opportunity to be said just around the conversation of AI. And I think there's a lot of fear mongering with AI. I think we all feel a little, let's call it post interest rate, post inflation, post AI hangover. But if we reframe that conversation, I also think there's so much opportunity, there's so much positivity, there's so much efficiency with it. And it creates opportunity, and it creates opportunity within gaps of generations where people like me are way behind those who are adapting fast. So I think reframing the conversation is just so important.
I think that's helpful. And to your point about the youth unemployment rate being high, that's tough. But yes, reframing the conversation I think helps a lot. Let's talk about I want to jump off the Jason Tells All because basically, to me, you're making the money conversation more mainstream, right? You make finance feel accessible. What's the way, that you notice, because you came up in the banking world, that money can feel kind of inaccessible? We use all this jargon. You said the actual... Often you hear people using an acronym.
Sure.
You said compound annual growth rate. People hear the acronym all the time and they don't know what it means. So is that part of the demystifying it?
Yeah, demystifying it is, I think there are barriers set in place so that it makes it harder to understand, but it's not that hard to understand. And so the way I would break it down, okay, we know here, we're at the stock exchange, right? We know that 10% of the wealthiest Americans own 93% of the market. So there are a lot of people that are here and that are watching this, that tune in every day, that are part of that, right? But there's also maybe people that work for them or friends or family or people they love that aren't. And what I would say is, think about it to them. The finance system is set up as like a slow drip to create enough pain, but not enough pain to do anything about it. An analogy I like to use, because I think analogies help us learn, is the dentist, right? Okay. I'm going to the dentist once or twice a year. I'm not going unless something really bad happens. I wake up today with a cavity, and even though I got to be here and that cavity's killing me, I'm going to have to cancel, and I am going right to the dentist. It creates urgency. Our financial system is set up to not make you feel that pain, right? It's not going to give you that cavity most of the time. So unless you proactively take advantage of it, it's just going to be like a slow rot, because that's how profitability kind of leads in certain directions to the top. And so an analogy like that might create a little urgency behind someone that doesn't understand finance to be like, we can't wait for the cavity. We have to go right now to understand the numbers. We have to get your cash flow. We have to get your cash outflow. The basic principles of things you do every day, we have to know. You go to the doctors, they take your blood pressure. They take your temperature. They know your vitals. They do your blood work. You have to know the vitals of your money, your debt, your income, how you spend, what your goals are. But in the United States, we just don't have that system set up from day one until now, and so many people just don't have the wherewithal. And then we create these barriers with jargon and just tough concepts that aren't really as challenging to accept. And then we're way behind. And so, it's just, to me, it's something I'm very passionate about, because it runs everything we do. We learn about the Pythagorean theorem, right? When did I use that for my 7th grade math class? But I didn't know anything about taxes or all this stuff. And then I will say what really motivated me was I was 16 years old. My grandfather was an oral surgeon, and I was at his house one day, and he said, come upstairs, I want to talk to you. And he sat upstairs, and he said, this is a lesson I promised myself I would teach you. And he said, people will lie, people will deceive, but numbers can't lie. They always tell the full picture. And he told me a story about majority of his wealth, 40%, he lost to a fraudulent financial advisor, because he said, set it and forget it. I'm fine. I'll just do my oral surgery. And that financial advisor actually is still in prison. And it was that day he showed me his portfolio, how much he had, how much my parents had, how much my grandma had. And he said, we're going to get comfortable with numbers because numbers don't lie and numbers will set you up for financial freedom. And so like to me, that just, it kind of got everything moving.
Okay, that's good. It's unfortunate what happened. At the same time, not every household has that.
True.
Nowadays, or even going back, as you mentioned, you're a millennial. So some millennials, many millennials feel behind, right? And they also have heavy debt burdens because of student loans. And they're often feeling like the American dream is out of reach. Now, the one thing I do wonder is maybe if the American dream has to be reshaped, right?
Yes, 100%.
You're big on breaking the blueprint. So I want to ask what's the blueprint for 2026, but I feel like I can't ask that because you say break the blueprint. What's the blueprint that works now, especially for millennials?
I mean, I think you nailed it with the reshaped because the American dream was always based on historicals, and we'd use historicals to expect what the future should look like. If we do that, we look at the numbers, the first-time home buyer in 1992 was 28 years old. First-time home buyer in 2026 is approaching 40 years old, right? You can't consider what history was and where we are today. So I think we have to get comfortable with stop looking at these cookie cutter solutions. Like there's a million people out there in the finance world that will tell you, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you have to have this in your emergency savings. There is no cookie cutter solution because each one of our situations is so customized. Who relies on me, what I spend, how I spend, what makes me happy when I spend. Your financial situation is different than mine, mine's different than yours, and what everybody's in here is different. The other thing too is therapy is a big trending topic, which is great. A lot of people are going to work on what's happening between their ears to understand why they're that way and how to put themselves in a better position for growth. We all have relationships with money. We got to see how our parents treat it. We got to see our siblings treat it, the good, the bad, the toxic. And so I think we have to dive within to say, what are our current habits? Why are we doing those? And how do we adjust those? But I think you have to reframe what the American dream looks like. And I think you have to be able to customize to your situation what can be adjusted and what can't. The thing is too, is where do you go to get information? Well, there's never been more information available with AI. Like with just AI, tell AI if you're embarrassed to tell anybody else. I don't know anything about finance. I don't know what this means. This is how much I make. How much can I spend at the grocery store if I want to budget for 7 days with $200? Have them do the work for you. But I just think we're at the point now, if you are not proactive about your finances, you will be so far left behind. You got credit card average rates in the 30%, right? 7% mortgage rates. It's not like when I started this in 2020, everything was at 0%. If you don't get active with this today, you're going to be left behind. It just there's just my analysis of the administration is with the debt that we're taking on in the United States and the markets trading at where they're trading and the price of real estate. I don't think there's any other solution at this point other than a little bit of continued inflation, a little bit of supporting real estate with different structures, like we've seen the 50-year Treasury being supported. Creating lower entry points, not lower price points. Looks like those are the themes. And with those themes, we're gonna have to find ways to cash flow more and make more on our money and spend less because everything is going, in my opinion, going to continue to be as expensive.
Okay.
Right? That's just my opinion. So I think we need to find ways to make more, save more, cash flow more, and we got to make money on our money.
No, that's a good point, especially about making more, because to your point about inflation, as we're taping this, we got new inflation data showing that it's pretty much the same as the previous month.
Yeah.
So while inflation's not getting hotter, it's still a little sticky, and shelter was the component that is stubborn, right? It's a stubbornly high cost for households. So I'm curious to know, given all your conversations about money, what's the most common mistakes that you're seeing right now with people and their money?
The number one most common mistake I'm seeing is that people just won't talk about it. right? We're not taught about it, so we don't talk about it, and especially in relationships. We know 75% of Americans don't feel comfortable talking money with their friends. Around 46% of Americans don't feel comfortable talking money to their loved one, their cohabitating partner, or in their marriage, and we're seeing that severely impact relationships. And I think there's a lot of looking left and a lot of looking right on social media, and as a result of that, we're feeling like we have to keep up with the Joneses, keep up with the Kardashians, and we're overspending and we're connecting through consumption, and connection is not built on consumption. And so the biggest thing I would say is, like, when you're feeling pain around money, find ways to talk about it, because you cannot find solutions until you do talk about it. And I think that's the starting point, honestly.
That's a great point about the transparency piece, because one of the things I've seen other people make this or have this advice is having an accountability partner. And I do think that's helpful. But to your point about, I guess there's probably a shame piece that some people feel. And I'm not hearing the same conversation that I heard. I think it was a couple years ago when it was loud budgeting was a trend. I'm not hearing that right now on social media. So I think you make a great point about people connecting through consumption and trying to, you took the thought out of my mind of keeping up with the Kardashians there. I want to go to the point that you made earlier where you started the conversation about both how they make money and then the experience as losing money. You work with a lot of athletes through your talent firm. What have you seen in terms of financial mistakes that you really want to caution, especially young athletes who are, kind of first to the game? They're signing these huge contracts, multi-million-dollar contracts, but some of those also are contracts that have certain stipulations around that. If you get injured, you might not get paid out this whole amount. You just bought a house. Now what? Yeah,
I mean, I think in general what we're starting to see is in people that are in 1099 work, freelance work, or of course athletes or creators now making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Number one thing they mess up, they don't account for taxes, right? So I would say, if you're freelancing, if you're 1099 work, if you are an athlete, if you are a creator, whatever it is that you've come into some high earnings, just knock 50% off the top. Then the second thing is what I have heard, especially when they get into this public figure game, again, whether it's celebrity, creator, athlete, whatever it is, there is a massive imposter syndrome. And I think anyone can kind of connect with that, especially as you're moving up the ladder. When you're in rooms you don't feel as though maybe you belong in, one of the first things you'll do is actually resort to spending. When you feel insecure, sometimes people will start to feel secure with maybe what they're wearing or how they're dressing or what they're spending. And so they're overspending to actually meet a psychology need of feeling secure. Those are the two biggest ones: taxes and the security of psychology in spending. And one of the biggest things, of course, is just like planning and investment strategy and then tax strategy. There are so many different nuances within those components that people need to take advantage of. But I think in the realms of athletes and creators and digital content creators, there's this concept right now that is relatively free if you can find it, and it's EMV, it's earned media value. And now you're seeing athletes, when they score a big touchdown or make a big, let's say they score a big goal or whatever it is, the second that they can get their helmet off, they are being advised by their managers and agents to take their helmet off, because that TV will see their face. Their face is then getting earned media value from the exposure, and that is now connecting brand partnerships on the digital side and the endorsement side and brand equity that we haven't seen before. What's really cool is you're seeing athletes that have big personalities that are taking advantage of earned media value, taking advantage of social media content creation, and they are making more money than some of the star athletes on the team because they're more brandable. And right now, that's what's cool. Like in the Michael Jordan days, you could only have one big star athlete create a company like, Jordan Brands, where I think they do $7 billion in annual revenue. Now you could have college athletes, anyone that literally has a phone and can bring some type of value, electricity, entertainment, education, humor, relatability, insight, inspiration, motivation, anything through this phone, and you could become a millionaire within 6 months. And I think that's kind of a cool concept, this earned media value. So you're seeing athletes take advantage of the equity, take advantage of additional income, but where they are missing, I would say, is taxes and spending. Okay. Yeah, I think that's not accounted for. I'm glad you mentioned the 1099 income, because obviously, with the digital creators that you work with, I'm sure for many of them, it might be their first experience with that, and they think that's just their money, and not realizing they need to
carve out, you say 50%, some say 30%. You're like, no, it's more than 30%.
I'm just like, be
me.
careful.
Yes.
I'm in Tennessee, no state income tax, but I'm
nice.
just a little careful with that because I've just seen especially when you go from having nothing to something overnight, behaviors change, people lean on you, your spending habits change, and so I always like caution people.
Uncle Sam, worst person to.
Yeah, you don't want them coming after you. That's for sure.
Exactly.
They will come in hot. I remember it was fun. December 31st at 3 p.m. when the wires closed, I was able to get my Section 179 car from my working place over 6,000 pounds for the write-out. So there are definitely some tools that are advantageous for small business owners, creators, athletes, things like that. But I don't know. You got to stay ahead of it.
Absolutely. With taxes, that's a key point because we often talk about investing, but then the tax strategies that you need to think about. How should people think about long-term investing and balancing that with their short-term needs?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is like if you have the ability based on your income to set yourself a salary based on a budget, that's what I do. I don't spend based on what I'm earning right now. I spend on a budget that I create with my salary. I like to share examples of what I do because I think it's a good testimony of do what you advocate for. That year that I made $2.7 million, which was 2024, I was living in a place where my rent was $2,000. So when you think about spend to actual earnings, right, that allowed me to build a really material cash flow. That cash flow then allowed me to earn money on that money and then afford a down payment for a home that I would dream to live in. So I think small sacrifices today pay a major dividend for a long time from now. Jim Carrey's got a great quote that pretty much says, if you can't sacrifice the life that you want because you care too much about what people think for 1 year, you need to rethink your priorities and what you're doing and how you're doing it. And with that statement, what I take away is just 1 year of really due diligence and self-sacrifice, not caring about what people think, but caring about what your wallet thinks, will lead you in a direction that you really can't imagine. And the next analogy I would give is like, I go into 2026 with finance kind of like I do with health. So I make a theme every month for my finances. I make a theme for my health every single month. I go to my dentist twice a year, my doctor once a year. I do the same with my finances. I then will have enough cash flow to do things that are really fun with investing in my physical health. I'll do the same with investing. So like this month it's dry January. Yeah, my theme. So my health theme is dry January.
No, okay. I know about that one.
Yes, that's my health theme.
That's a great theme.
That's a great theme.
I don't want to discount
tough
that.
While I'm in the NFL, but tough with my Buffalo Bills. But my financial theme is exactly what I didn't do December 31st. It's full tax planning right now. So for the year, I'm preparing what my taxes will be, different tax strategy, green tax initiatives, real estate potential tax breaks, different REITs. I'm doing all tax work now, so I'm not doing it in December, November when there's a scramble. And in our industry, in the talent management industry, in the digital content creation industry, fourth quarter is the busiest. I always wait till the fourth quarter. So this theme is all about proper tax planning, budgeting, allocation. I have my own tax accounts now where they're fully funded, and it's all tax planning in January.
And then if you want to leave us with 1 to 3 main ideas for the Money Playbook for 2026, what would those be?
Okay, 3 ideas. Let's see. You got to move with the trends. I think now everything is changing so fast, it's the only constant. I think where you're investing has to be aligned with the trend. So focus on what is trending, and you can do that in a lot of ways. You can literally look on social media, which is our new social currency. You can look at Google searches, and of course there's a million different ways financial advisors will tell you to stay ahead of trends. So I would say invest in trends. The second one I would say is the idea of owning a house is not mandatory anymore. If you are a new-time home buyer, you might be in a much better position from renting than buying, and I would tell you to do the analysis on renting versus buying and see what makes sense. And let's say the third trend I am going to say, or the third piece of advice I'm going to say is use debt to your advantage. There's good debt, there's bad debt. Bad debt is aligning with all, of course, depreciating assets. Good debt is all aligning with appreciating assets. And there's so many tools with debt in which you can use it for such an advantageous way. And that's what the wealthiest of the wealth do. So the last thing I would say is like study the people you dream to be. Right now, content is so available. And so the people that you dream to be, they tell you how they invest. They show their portfolio. They tell you tactics they're doing. Like you have so much information now. Start, just getting an idea of who are the people that you want to be and replicating. Copy paste, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
All right, Jason, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was
Appreciate
fun.
that. This was great. That's Jason Tartick. So our thanks to Jason for joining us here at the New York Stock Exchange, and thank him for joining us here on Market Overtime. For more episodes, be sure to follow our YouTube page and be sure to watch us 24/7 at schwabnetwork.com.